We're coming on the air tonight with a new warning from a key Israeli leader on the war between Israel and Hamas, that the fighting could soon expand into other parts of the Middle East. We're on the ground in the region with what the situation on the border between Israel and Lebanon looks like, as hopes for a ceasefire in Gaza dwindle. Plus, we've got flood alerts and evacuation warnings along the East Coast tonight as millions of Americans head home after the holidays. We'll tell you if that could mean trouble for your travel plans. And an emotional moment for the friends and families of the University of Idaho students who were murdered last November. The house where it happened getting torn down today, but not everyone's happy about it. We'll explain with our reporter following the story. And then 2024 presidential hopeful Nikki Haley trying to walk back some controversial comments she made about what caused the Civil War, why her answer didn't include slavery, and what she's saying about it now. Plus, how a viral moment centered around joy and dance led to a movement in Iran with people defying the government on social media and in the streets. We'll have that in tonight's original. Hi, I'm Dasha Burns in for Hallie. And tonight, all eyes on a potential new front in this war between Israel and Hamas that could soon expand into other parts of the Middle East. A key Israeli leader warning that it could ramp up its military action against the militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon. Both sides have been exchanging fire there for weeks, as any hopes that a ceasefire could come in Gaza appear to be dwindling, with Israel now saying, quote, the stopwatch for a diplomatic solution is running out. That war cabinet meeting tonight, as we're just learning, Secretary of State Blinken will return to Israel in the new year, Israeli sources tell NBC News. The UN is now warning 40% of people inside Gaza are at risk of famine, saying they're grappling with, quote, catastrophic hunger. All this as we're just learning a second American citizen was killed during Hamas's October 7th terror attack on Israel. This woman, Judy Weinstein, was killed alongside her husband. She was a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 7. Let's bring in Jay Gray, who's on the ground in Tel Aviv. Yeah. Jay, let's start right there. What more do we know about Judith Weinstein?
Well, we have confirmed that she has died just about a week after it was confirmed that her husband has also died. What's not clear is where or when that may have happened. We know that they were victims during the attack on October 7th, that their kibbutz both wounded during those attacks. But it's still not certain whether they died as a result of those wounds at the kibbutz and their bodies were taken by Hamas terrorists into Gaza, or if they died in captivity, something their family is really hoping that they can find out once there is a chance to investigate all of this a bit more. As you talked about, mother of 4, grandmother of 7, and someone who was very active in this kibbutz, someone who was an important part of this community.
Right. It's so important to remember there are human beings here. We're talking about a real human toll.
Yes.
At the same time as we're talking about these threats that we're hearing that this war could get bigger. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, look, I was up around the Lebanon border about 2 weeks after the ground incursion started, and there was a lot of activity there, but it's really ramped up over the last 2 weeks. And we've seen back and forth. The fighting has intensified. Israel, as you talked about, is saying that the time for a diplomatic conclusion to that is running very thin. And we heard from a member of the War Cabinet today, Benny Gantz, who is a very outspoken member of that cabinet. He's saying that if the world does not act to stop the shooting into the northern settlements and to remove Hezbollah from the border, the IDF will do it. I can tell you, Dasha, that I have been told troops are mounting there, more troops moving in, more equipment, tanks and other equipment, and they are preparing for an all-out front there if that's necessary, something that's a big concern not only here in Israel, but globally as well.
Wow, thinking about an expansion of this is just unimaginable right now. Jay, thank you so much.
No.
And tonight, millions are under flood alerts up and down the rainy East Coast, with evacuation warnings being issued for some towns by the beach. This comes on what AAA says could be one of the season's busiest days on the roads as people head home from their holiday trips. It says over 115 million Americans are set to travel this week, the second most since they started tracking this back in 2000. Also, some delays today for people flying home in South Florida. Check out the lines at the Miami and West Palm Beach airports as travelers wait and wait to get on their planes home. Let's get now to Marissa Parra, live for us in Florida. Marissa, we know parts of the country are still seeing rain and clouds. How has that impacted travel?
Hey, well, don't be fooled by this beautiful setting sun behind me, Dasha. It has been rainy and miserable for most of the day. We would know we've been stuck in it for the last 10 hours or so. But I can tell you that all of that rain had a significant impact on air travel here in South Florida. Even though the skies are clearing up right now, obviously that sort of has a domino effect on air travel. So Miami and Fort Lauderdale currently leading the map of, it's called the misery map, and FlightAware keeps track of all of the delays and cancellations around the country. So they're winning a contest that no one wants to win. We know that roughly 10% of the delays around the country today have actually been from Miami International. And Dasha, you hit the nail on the head. This is a really bad time for that, because it was just this past weekend at Miami International that we saw a record number of travelers, single day record made just this past weekend. So this is a busy time, whether it's in the skies or on the road. We heard from one miserable traveler from one South Florida airport. Here's what they had to say.
I am tired. It's cold. Oh man, uncomfortable. Optimistic still, but everybody unfortunately doesn't have that much wiggle room. I don't know what's going on, but it's not the best. It's not looking the best at all.
Well, I hope that that traveler is doing better now with the beautiful skies right now. Hopefully caught the flight that she was trying to make with her family. But as we know, when it comes to holiday travel, the majority of travelers take to the roads. We know 104 million of them, Dasha. So the good news is, if we're going to end on a good note here, is gas prices are about the same right now as they were this time last year. And even when it comes to air travel, even though we're seeing so many delays, it is nothing like what we saw this time last year with the Southwest travel meltdown at those airports, Dasha.
Ooh, girl, that misery map might be the most depressing graphic I've ever seen on television. Let me just ask you before I let you go. Look, it seems like this post-pandemic travel boom just shows no sign of letting up. So are we just throwing our hands up and getting used to these big crowds over the next few years?
That is the big question. As someone who has been covering travel for quite some time now across different cities and regions, we do only see it continue to go up, especially when it comes to air travel, especially since the pandemic. And so I think, as you're about to hear from a AAA spokesperson, there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them being that this also might be a product of people were hunkered down and saving money during the pandemic, and now they're finally able to use it. Take a listen.
We saw it over the summer and over Thanksgiving. More people are flying now post-pandemic. There's more interest in travel. Now so many people want to get back out there. Hybrid work and remote work certainly give travelers more flexibility to go on trips, work from the road, to maybe not be at the airports and on the roads when everybody else is going back.
So a couple of other things on the other end of that. We're also seeing an increase in people taking to cruise ships. So the cruising industry is doing well, really well right now, seeing numbers they haven't seen since well before the pandemic, Dasha. And I will add one other thing in terms of the changes and how things are looking is, at the very least, traffic has not been as bad as we have seen it in other places. Right now, you can see, at least along the Florida Turnpike, it's looking good. So there's still some good things to be thankful for here when it comes to covering travel, which we know is often a very messy and miserable experience.
Well, I'm glad you've got a little break from the misery. Marissa Parra, thank you so much. Right now, crews are tearing down the house where 4 University of Idaho students were murdered, despite calls from some of the victims' families to keep it standing. The university deciding to demolish it to help move forward with the healing process. You see the names and faces of the 4 victims here. Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Gonzalez, Zaina Kernodle, and Madison Mogan, stabbed to death last November. And some of their families say tearing down the house could hurt the upcoming trial the jury wants to see, or has additional questions. The trial hasn't been scheduled yet, even though the suspect was arrested a year ago tomorrow. Let's bring in Dana Griffin, who's been covering it all, the latest on the case. Dana, how did the university make this decision, especially given some of the families don't necessarily agree with this?
Exactly. Well, neither the prosecution nor the defense fought to keep this house standing. And the university says, look, we think it's time to move on. It's time for our community to heal. They also acknowledge that it costs them about $700 a day to keep looky-loos and trespassers off the property. So it's also very expensive. And now is a prime time because a lot of students are home for the winter break. We spoke with a spokesperson. Here's what else she had to say about this.
Our understanding is from a legal standpoint, everyone was finished with the house. So then it's just the emotional piece, which is absolutely worth acknowledging and appreciating. But knowing that for our community, it was time for the house to come down.
Yeah, even today on campus, and some of the neighbors, they say they're glad it's being torn down because it's an ugly reminder of the gruesome murders that happened inside that home. And for a lot of people, this is a time to heal.
So as that gets torn down, what happens next to that land?
So right now it's going to stay vacant until the university decides what to do with it next. But the family has been very vocal. The family of Kaylee Gonzalez, also Zaina Kernodle, they say this was an opportunity to preserve that house because what if the jury comes back and says, hey, we have questions, we have perspective that we need to see. And they sent this overnight kind of last ditch effort to try to get the university and the DA's office to keep this house standing. They say some of the things that they had questions about was, where were the surviving roommates? What perspective did they have? What could they see? Where was Brian Kohlberger parked outside? Where could he have looked into the house, allegedly? And also, what could you hear? This is a 3-story home, and there were some noises that one of the surviving roommates heard. And if the jury has questions about that, it may be helpful. So they are trying to make sure that this is an ironclad case. They don't want anything to jeopardize a potential conviction.
Right. And this story has been going on. We've been covering this for so long now.
Yeah.
And so it's complicated. You want to heal at the same time. It's still not over.
It's still not over. And, for the families, this has been a very difficult thing for them. They want justice. And we still don't have a trial date set.
Right.
The prosecution has requested a 6-week trial date in the summertime, partly because they want to make sure that students aren't around. The high school is right next to this courthouse. And for the university, they've got a lot of sporting events. When you've got a case like this that reaches national attention, a lot of hotel rooms are taken up. This is a really small town community. Also, people are wondering if the defense will file a motion to try to get the case moved to a larger city, maybe Boise, where you've got a larger jury pool. And that's obviously something the defense may want. So we'll be watching.
Well, I know you'll be following all of it for us. Dana Griffin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
2024 presidential hopeful Nikki Haley today trying to clear the air about why she didn't mention slavery when a voter asked her what the cause of the Civil War was. She's saying she thought that part was a given. The moment in question happened last night at a town hall in New Hampshire. Listen.
What was the cause of the United States Civil War?
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. What do you think the cause of the Civil War was?
Thank you. And in the year 2023, it's astonishing to me that you answer that question without mentioning the word slavery.
What do you want me to say about slavery?
No, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Next question.
So today, this is how she's kind of backpedaling that.
Of course, the Civil War was about slavery. We know that. That's unquestioned, always the case. We know the Civil War was about slavery. But it was also more than that. It was about the freedoms of every individual. It was about the role of government.
Ryan Nobles joins me now to unpack all of this. Ryan, the backlash didn't take long to come fast and furious. Hallie answer, right? What she said last night and how she explains it today. What is she trying to say, and is it enough?
Well, the one thing that's clear, Dasha, is that she tried to fix this as quickly as possible. She went on a radio show this morning to explain her thinking. She answered it right away during a town hall. She even did a gaggle with a group of reporters who peppered her with questions about it. And basically, her argument is that slavery is a given when it comes to the Civil War. And she was working off of that foundation when she gave this kind of long, meandering answer about freedom and some of the other factors that are involved with the Civil War and how historians would view the Civil War. And you're right, it's drawn quite a bit of skepticism from some of her opponents, among them Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. Listen to how he responded to this.
And I think that she showed time and time again that when it's time, when the lights get hot, that she wilts under pressure. And that was a good example last night.
So Hallie is hoping that this just blows over, and there is some evidence that in a Republican primary that is the case, because there have been a number of controversial comments made by a number of candidates in this race, most principally Donald Trump, who has made a lot of comments that have drawn quite a bit of criticism, and it hasn't impacted him at all in the polls. So we'll have to see. Time is running out for Nikki Haley. Up until this point, she was starting to surge in the polls. So Dasha will have to see if this derails the progress that she's made up until this point.
Right. And Haley is not Trump. I mean, no politician is. And as you mentioned, time is of the essence here. We're so close to the Iowa caucuses and then New Hampshire, and we're rocking and rolling through the primaries here. So this kind of gaffe, if you will, at this point, could this be a serious speed bump or even potentially a big roadblock for her?
Well, you're right, because the timing is so crucial for Nikki Haley, and the margin of error that she has is so small. I mean, look at some of these polls. For instance, she is in second place in Iowa right now to Donald Trump, but he leads by such a wide margin. And what Nikki Haley needs to do, first of all, she's got to beat Ron DeSantis in Iowa, but she also has to cut in to Donald Trump's lead. And she may not need to win in Iowa, but she does have to show improvement beyond where she stands right now. She's got to beat expectations. And something like this, if there are voters out there that are sampling the options outside of Donald Trump, but they're trying to come up with a reason to vote for someone other than Donald Trump, this may be something that just eliminates her as a potential candidate for any number of reasons. Because she left slavery out, because to Ron DeSantis's point, it just looks like she can't handle the pressure of the moment. All of these things are possibilities. And because everything at this stage of the game is so crucial for Nikki Haley, anything could knock her off. But there's still time, and there's still opportunity for her to fix this. It's just that time is running out.
It is do or die time for all of these candidates. Ryan, thank you so much. And a Missouri woman who plotted to kill her allegedly abusive mother is now out of prison. Early this morning, 32-year-old Gypsy Rose Blanchard was released on parole. She was serving a 10-year sentence related to the 2015 killing of her mother. Her story gained the attention of the world and Hollywood after a popular documentary came out in 2017. Since then, there's also been a TV series, and now a docuseries is on the way where Blanchard tells her story herself. She claims her mom physically and mentally abused her, forcing her to fake serious illnesses, which led her to getting painful procedures she did not need. Her boyfriend ended up stabbing and killing her mother while Gypsy was hiding in the bathroom. He's serving life in prison without parole. Let's bring in Jesse Kirsch for more. Jesse, Blanchard's story really captured the attention of so many. Catch us up to speed here. What do we know about what happened in this case?
Yeah, so Dasha, back in 2015, Gypsy Rose Blanchard's mother was found stabbed to death. She and her then boyfriend were accused of plotting this murder. And what came to light throughout the course of this case is a detailed history of allegations of child abuse by her mother on Gypsy Rose Blanchard. And what her mother's accused of doing is forcing her daughter to act as if she were devastatingly ill, allegedly shaving her daughter's head to make it seem like she had leukemia, forcing her to be in a wheelchair, forcing her to use a feeding tube, those kinds of disturbing allegations. And This was said to be going on for years. Again, these are all allegations. We have not heard from her mother on this because her mother, again, was found dead. So all of that played out. In recent years, it has gotten attention both in the documentaries as well as in a dramatized series, which won Patricia Arquette an Emmy. So there's been a lot of media attention around all this. And now Gypsy Rose is literally walking into this media frenzy because she has now been released from the correctional center. That happened early this morning.
Yeah, Jesse, I want to play a clip from that upcoming Lifetime docuseries where she actually tells her story herself. Listen.
There was a lot of emotional and physical abuse, hospitals, surgeries. I started to feel like it was either her or me.
So what could we learn now that she's getting a chance to share her story, not in court, but actually in the public eye?
Yeah, we're already hearing more from Blanchard. Dasha, she did an interview with People magazine before her release, and the magazine has published that online. And here's part of what she said to have said in that interview. If I had another chance to redo everything, I don't know if I would go back to when I was a child and tell my aunts and uncles that I'm not sick and mommy makes me sick, says Gypsy. Or if I would travel back to just the point of that conversation with Nick and tell him, you know what, I'm going to tell the police everything. I kind of struggle with that. But she adds, quote, nobody will ever hear me say I'm glad she's dead or I'm proud of what I did. I regret it every single day. And she also talks about wanting to send a message to other people in abusive relationships, that murder is not the answer, is a message she is trying to send moving forward, Dasha. But certainly a disturbing case, a lot of allegations around this. And we'll be watching to see what more comes out around this.
So many people talking about this story today. Jesse, thank you so much. Right now, a caravan of more than 1,500 people is heading north, further into Mexico, as they head towards the United States southern border. That number coming down from Mexico's president, down significantly from the estimated 8,000 people believed to be in that caravan just yesterday. Plus, we're getting new details about the meeting between Mexico's president and U.S. officials. Both sides call it a good and productive trip and have agreed to work more closely together to tackle the crisis. That is extending beyond just the border cities, with mayors from New York, Chicago, and Denver saying they have no more space for migrants coming into their cities and are demanding more of a heads up and coordination on when migrant buses can arrive. Let's bring in Morgan Chesky in Dallas. Morgan, this caravan will add to what is already an overwhelming number of migrants trying to get into the country. Where are they now, and what more do we know?
And Dasha, this caravan was last seen in the state of Chiapas, Mexico. That is near the border with Guatemala. And you mentioned the numbers have dropped significantly. Notable to hear from the organizers of that caravan earlier this week, who said they were about 8,000 strong and that 2,000 more had joined them in a single day. And then within the last 48 hours, we've heard from both the president of Mexico, who put that number closer to 1,600, and from federal officials who said their estimates had it around 3,000. This is a group that is still 1,000 miles south of the U.S.-Mexico border, but there was real concern because their push north was coming on the heels of a record-breaking week where more than 12,000 migrants crossed the U.S.-Mexico border illegally in a single day. That was just before Christmas. So as of right now, there is still some significant distance with that migrant caravan, although we do know that they certainly will not be the last. As for who will arrive at the U.S.-Mexico border, that remains to be seen. But there are several international crossings that are still impacted as Border Patrol has surged resources elsewhere to handle those illegal crossings and that recent surge. Dasha?
Yeah, I mean, Morgan, there is a real concern from cities across the country that they just can't handle more migrants coming in. What, if anything, is the federal government doing to help?
Right. Well, we do know that they've promised to work with these cities as they handle this influx of migrants. In fact, we have a statement in today from the White House sharing President Biden's commitment, and it reads explicitly that he's committed to addressing this problem. That's why he submitted a supplemental funding request to Congress which includes additional resources to secure the border with more law enforcement, more grant funding for jurisdictions hosting migrants, and funding to accelerate the processing of work permits for eligible non-citizens. Those accelerated work permits are crucial because we have heard from multiple people, Dasha, that they arrive in the United States, would like to contribute to themselves and or their family, but they're unable to do so because of documentation. If you combine that element with the fact that some of these asylum claims take years before they're ever heard in a courtroom, it is certainly a far less than ideal situation here for anyone hoping to go through proper channels to be here in the country legally. Dasha.
Right, Morgan, thank you so much for staying on this for us. And coming up, new warnings tonight from the World Health Organization about fake versions of Ozempic, how officials say they're getting into supply chains next. Plus, more fallout for Boeing's most popular plane, why the company is telling airlines to inspect all their 737 MAX planes. Health regulators around the world are sounding the alarm about counterfeit Ozempic. Fake versions of the hugely popular diabetes drug that's often used for weight loss have been reported now in over a dozen countries. That's catching the attention of the World Health Organization. We first brought you this story last week when the FDA warned Americans of the fake drugs, saying it seized thousands of units of counterfeit versions sold through some legitimate drug supply sources like pharmacies. Berkeley Lovelace Jr. has been following the story for us. Berkeley, how legit do these fake drugs look if they're getting into normal supply in some cases?
Yeah, so they're not exactly the same, but they are close enough to fool somebody if they didn't know what to look for. So in the packaging that the FDA found, they found that the needle packaging that came with the drug looked exactly or nearly exactly the same as the real ones. The logos, the brand logos on the fake products looked nearly identical as the real ones, and even the products came with a serial and lot number, just like the real ones.
Wow. So what's in these drugs? Do we know? Are they dangerous?
Yeah, so that's something the FDA is investigating right now. In Germany, in the fake products that they got, that they found that the drugs contained insulin instead of semaglutide, the active ingredient in Ozempic. And so injecting insulin in somebody without diabetes is extremely dangerous. And so some people in Austria were hospitalized because of this product. However, it's important to note in the U.S. that there has been no serious adverse events in people from these fake products. The FDA says that there have been 5 people harmed by the product, but they were not serious. The side effects were similar to what you see with the real Ozempic.
So what can people do to figure out if the drug that they have is the real kind?
Yeah, so the fake products were distributed through legitimate supply channels, and so the FDA has posted the fake serial and lot number that was used in these products, so people can be on the lookout for that. That being said, experts told me that the best way is just to get your prescription through a healthcare provider. A lot of times people will try to go through other means to get their medication, usually driven by money. I mean, if you look at the cost of weight loss drugs right now, a lot of these drugs can go for around $1,000 a month just for a month's supply. And so at least if you're getting it through the doctor will know and be on the lookout for these fake products along with you as well.
Right. I'm sure the drug maker isn't thrilled about this. What are they saying about it?
Yeah, so Novo Nordisk, the maker of Ozempic, is working with the FDA on its investigation. So far, it says none of the fake product came from its authorized supply chain. So right now, they're looking to see whether a third-party criminal wholesaler has gotten the product or whether somebody else in the supply chain may have diverted this product away and has been selling the fake version.
Berkeley Lovelace, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's get over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Boeing is urging airlines to inspect their 737 MAX planes for a possible loose bolt in the rudder system. It's the latest quality issue to affect the jetliner. Remember, 2 737 MAX crashes a few years ago killed more than 300 people. The company says the current issue was discovered in routine testing and that all new 737 MAX jets will undergo checks. Alaska and United Airlines say they don't expect any operational impacts. symptoms. Number 2, the rate of long COVID might be much lower in kids than it is in adults. A new study found less than 1% of children develop significant COVID symptoms 6 months after infection. Among adults, that rate has been estimated anywhere between 7 and 20%. Number 3, about 40% of borrowers did not make payments after the pandemic-era pause on student loan payments expired in October. That's according to new data from the Department of Education. Student loan debt now totals more than $1.7 trillion. Number 4, actor Pierce Brosnan got 2 citations at Yellowstone National Park after walking into restricted thermal areas, according to court docs. He's set to appear in court in January. The actor's publicist and legal rep didn't respond to a request for comment. Number 5, nobody won the $700 million Powerball jackpot last night, so that means it's up for grabs again on Saturday. Now the top prize will grow to an estimated $760 million. It'll be the last drawing of 2023. Maybe someone will get lucky before the end of the year. And when we come back, Donald Trump's ballot battle in Colorado heading all the way to the state Supreme Court. We're talking about the GOP's new moves next. Plus, how 8 puppies were rescued after being dumped in a sealed box on a highway. More on that in The Local. NBC covers hundreds of stories each day because it's tough to read, listen, or watch them all. Our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Western Bureau, officials in San Francisco rescued 2 people after their car flipped over and slid like 100 feet down a hill. A hiker saw it all happen and called 911. Officials say both people are expected to be okay. Out of our Southern Bureau, 8 puppies were found dumped on the side of a highway in Texas, according to the Humane Society there. Apparently, a Good Samaritan saw one of the puppy's nose peeking out through a crack in the crate. The person then brought them in. The animal shelter says all 8 are doing well. And from our Northeast Bureau, New Yorkers celebrated Good Riddance Day today in Times Square. People wrote down things they want to leave in the past on pieces of paper, then threw them into a fire. This year, they had a magician on hand to help out. It's been a pre-New Year's Eve tradition for the past 17 years. I'll have to get in on that. The Colorado GOP now taking its fight to try to get Donald Trump back on the ballot up to the Supreme Court. It's asking the High Court to overturn that controversial state court ruling that says Mr. Trump is not eligible to be on the Colorado ballot because of his role in the events leading up to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. We should note the former president's own legal team says it'll also file an appeal. This new move from Colorado's Republican Party means Mr. Trump is back on the ballot for now, at least for the Republican primary in that state. One big question, what will the Supreme Court do? Vaughn Hilliard joins me now. Vaughn, good to see you, my friend. So we've got a lot of back and forth on this. What could come next here?
Hey, Dasha, look, of all the legal battles that Donald Trump is facing in the months ahead, this is the one that has the highest political stakes. For Donald Trump, and not only him, but the Colorado GOP, which is making this appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, if the U.S. Supreme Court, in fact, takes up this appeal, they could find and affirm the Colorado Supreme Court's decision disqualifying him from the ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which says that any individual who has engaged in insurrection or aided or provided comfort to those who have engaged in insurrection is disqualified from the ballot. Now, it's a matter of timing. January 15th is the Iowa caucus. 1 week later, the New Hampshire primary. So Republican voters are about to begin selecting who they want their Republican nominee to be, and that only increases the stakes of this for Donald Trump, his legal team, and the Colorado GOP. Take a look at the filing from last night, in which the lawyers for the Colorado GOP write in part, quote, "The prompt hearing of this case is necessary necessary to prevent the Colorado Supreme Court's decision from having an irreparable effect on the electoral process. Now, there's a lot of nuance as part of this filing here from the Colorado GOP to the Supreme Court, but one of them is making the case that it should not be the decision of the Secretary of State of any state or a state court to determine whether an individual running for president of the United States is qualified or not.
Vaughn, there's a lot of action in Colorado because we're also learning about another political shakeup in that state with Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert switching districts. What more can you tell us about that?
Right. Lauren Boebert, the close ally of Donald Trump, but also an individual who was facing intense scrutiny back in September when she was seen groping her partner at a play of Beetlejuice, as well as vaping in the theater before being asked to remove. Well, she just barely won her election a year ago by just about 500 votes against her Democratic opponent. And this time she was facing a Republican primary challenger who was polling competitively against her. So she announced that she's going to actually be running in a congressional district next door. It's about 200 miles away from where she lives, but it's a heavy Republican district. And if she makes it out of that primary, you're likely looking at a Congresswoman Boebert heading into another term. Dasha?
Never a dull moment in American politics. It's good to see you, my friend. Thanks, Vaughn Hilliard. All right, staying with politics now. As the countdown to 2024 heats up and 2023 comes to an end, our Steve Kornacki is breaking down all the major clues where we're getting from what we're getting from polling this year and what everything we're learning about 2023 tells us about where the race to the White House could go next. Steve has more from the big board.
All right, well, we are approaching once every 4 years, the big one, the presidential election year 2024, almost upon us. So let's take a look here at how politics have and how the election of 2024 has kind of taken shape in 23 and the big questions we're looking at as 2024 kicks off. So first of all, who's going to be the Republican nominee, presumably against Joe Biden? At the start of 2023, this seemed like a very up in the air question. You can see the trend line for the candidates. And remember, at the start of 23, Republicans were coming off a pretty rough midterm. Candidates who'd been closely aligned with Donald Trump had lost key races in 2022. At the start of 23, Ron DeSantis was running pretty close in the poll average to Donald Trump. And then look what happened. It just exploded here for Trump and went the other way for DeSantis. What happened right around here in the calendar? That was when the first indictment of Trump came down, the one from the Manhattan district attorney. It almost seems to have triggered a rally around Trump effect among Republicans, and that's just held all year through all the legal drama and everything else that's happened. And here we are at the end of the year, and in the average, Trump just, open lengths ahead of Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Ramaswamy, and Christie too, for that matter. So we'll see in the early contests if any of those candidates are going to have a shot here to beat Trump. They're probably going to have to make some noise, whether it's DeSantis in Iowa. He seems to really be trying to plant his flag there. Haley in New Hampshire. She's gotten some encouraging polling news there. Can one of them beat Trump in one of these early states? Of course, Haley's South Carolina will play a key role among the early states as well. Can one of them beat Trump in the early states and make this a race? That is what we're going to find out in the first 6 weeks or so of 2024. But how about the Democratic end of things? Joe Biden seems poised to be the Democratic nominee. What kind of year has he had politically? Well, again, he started 2023 coming off those good midterms for Democrats, and his approval rating, 46-50, wasn't that bad, but it's taken a hit this year. And as we start to close out the year, our final NBC poll had him at just 40% approval, 57% disapproval. How does this compare to past presidents entering their re-election year? Here you can see it. Here's the 40 that we have Biden at right now. These are all the final polls heading into the election year, re-election year that NBC conducted. You just see all the recent presidents. Look, Trump got beat in 2020. He was at 44 heading into his re-election year. Bush Sr. got beat in 92. He was at 52 and heading south rapidly there. But you see how that number compares. That's the lowest. That's the lowest in an NBC poll for an incumbent facing a re-election here. But it is a tight race when you poll Biden versus Trump. At the start of the year, in the average of the polls nationally, Biden had a 2-point advantage. Now, at the end of the year, it is Trump who, on average, has a 2-point advantage here. It's a very, very close race, obviously. And what are the concerns of voters? The dynamics we'll be talking about if this race does materialize. Joe Biden, of course, is the oldest president ever at this point, and his fitness his age, about 3 in 4 voters in our poll say it's a major or moderate concern. Big thing in 24 is going to be Trump's legal situation. Are there convictions? What goes on in the courtroom for him? 62% right now say that's a major or moderate concern for them. Would that number change if there's a conviction? Would that number change based on how these cases start to sort out? Big question, obviously, we'll be following well into 2024. And this is interesting, too. Just there is clearly what this ballot question is showing you here is matching Trump against just a generic Democrat. Trump loses sizably. Matching Biden against a generic Republican. Biden loses by double digits. It's just showing you broadly there's not a big appetite for Trump versus Biden, even though it seems that each party, at least as we enter 2024, is poised to go in that direction. And that leads to this final graphic here, a poll from the Wall Street Journal recently. They included a bunch of third-party options, and against Biden and Trump, they added up to 17%. That's a big question heading into 2024. Is there going to be a real third-party candidate to create a wild card in this?
Our thanks to Steve Kornacki for that great work at the big board. Now, coming up, a new report says our nation's capital is struggling to stay above water. We're talking to the reporter behind the story next in tonight's Backstory. It's time to get to the backstory. Our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into our bigger picture. Tonight, an in-depth look at how the nation's capital is struggling to stay above water. The Washington Post outlining some of the many ways we're seeing Washington's vulnerability to flooding play out in real time. From multi-million-dollar unplanned changes to prevent the National Museum of African American History and Culture from collapsing under the pressure of a buried creek it was built over, to drowning cherry trees around the tidal basin, to historical waterways long buried under the city now bursting back to life like zombies as climate change intensifies storms and rainfall. You see here a flood risk map of the area where these zombie streams could cause trouble, and the result of the people living in the nation's capital, thousands of dollars in flooding damage, which many can't afford to pay. One local telling the Post that it's embarrassing to have to verbalize that the help she and other people in her community need from the local government. Dana Priest is an investigative reporter for the Washington Post who worked on this story. Dana, thank you so much for being with us. You've covered a lot of different topics over the course of your great career, a lot of them focused on the Pentagon, intelligence agencies, and more. But this is different. What made you look into the issue of climate and infrastructure in D.C.?
Well, I'm always looking for a good story, and I live in D.C., and I found a good story right under my feet. And the more I picked away at it, the better the story got, which was, we are living in Washington, D.C. The federal part, downtown, is living on fill that was brought in when the city was created, when George Washington decided to put a city here. They brought in, they filled in the main downtown, which used to be part of the Potomac River, with excavation, with rocks that were taken from the Capitol excavation. And so we have a very high water table, and we sit at sea level. So Washington, D.C., you might think of it as the giant columns and buildings and the Capitol and the monuments, but it's really a delta city like New Orleans. And when climate change is occurring, where storms are getting more intense and rainfall is getting more intense, you have a confluence of events. You have you can't absorb the ground around the Capitol and around the National Mall cannot absorb much water. And in fact, if you get a heavy downpour, the water actually comes back up from the ground. And so as sea level rises and as these internal, we call them urban floods take place, we know them as flash floods, you have just much more flooding. You have nowhere for the rain to go. Even if it could get through the ground to the sewers, the sewer and drain water systems are overburdened. They're very old in most parts of the city, and so they fill up quickly.
And Dana,
as you
mentioned here,
look at some of the national.
This article, let me just, because we're running out of time, and I want to get your take on what you really took away as you were writing this, taking a step back and looking at the effects of how this city was built, right? So when you were looking into these challenges collectively, what was your biggest takeaway about especially how fast all of this was happening?
Well, honestly, I think we're one big flood away from disaster, not only for the people that live in the city, but also for the national part of the city. There's like $17 billion worth of national treasures, 39 critical buildings, facilities downtown. And if we had both a big storm and a flash flood, there's nowhere for that water to go. We have seen increasing big floods, but really we just are one big flood away. In the meantime, we're going to have to rip out the cherry trees, not all of them, but about 300 will go just to increase the size of the seawall in order to protect against sea level rise. So it's hitting the Washington area and Washington, D.C., from all different angles: flash floods, sea rise, and intensifying storms and river flooding. And unfortunately, there are many jurisdictions involved, so you can expect that there won't be an agreement on what needs to be done.
Dana, such an important and powerful piece of reporting that extends well beyond Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us. Still to come, there's a new kind of protest in Iran sparked by a viral video of a man dancing. Why that's such a big deal? Next in tonight's original. Now we want to bring you today's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. And tonight we want to bring you to Iran, where people are taking to the streets to dance, a viral movement ignited on social media by an unlikely source, with people simply expressing their joy through dance. But under the current Iranian regime, it's rarely that simple, because it can be illegal there to dance in groups publicly. Ali Arouzi has the story.
A viral video leading to a movement in Iran. Surprisingly ignited by this man, Boughi. But it's not just the catchy folk tune and confident moves striking a chord. It's the simplistic act of dancing for joy on the street. In a country where this kind of dancing in public groups is frowned upon by authorities and often illegal, it becomes a powerful symbol of civil disobedience. A BBC Persian compilation of social media videos appearing to show the dancing trend spreading rapidly from gyms to parties, basketball courts, soccer fields, alleyways, and more. We also spoke with DJ Sonami, who remixed the original video, adding synths and a driving beat that's helped supercharge the viral trend. It's a great feeling, and I'm happy that with a little effort of us, people became joyful. His producer, Qasem Alipour, telling us the remix is reaching millions of people in Iran and outside the country. But it also drew attention from authorities. According to the New York Times, local police announced they arrested 12 men in the original video with Boughi in early December and shut down their Instagram pages. The public responded with swift outrage, flooding social media channels and denouncing the alleged crackdown.
And they all did this to unite and speak up against the Iranian government, and it worked.
The police later issued a statement denying Boughi had been arrested, according to the Times. This video was like a virus. They could not prevent it, so they had to accept it. With Boughi's account restored, he's racked up over 1 million followers, and his latest post just this week, still dancing up a storm. It's just the latest chapter of civil disobedience since Iranians took to the streets in mass protests over the death of Mahsa Amini in 2022.
They feel that they want to fight for their rights and fight for human rights and their dignity.
Amini died in authorities' custody after being detained for allegedly failing to fully cover her hair and defying the country's strict dress codes.
You still have in the Iranian people, since the death of Mahsa Amini, something that's been basically let out of the box. And the Iranian people are not going to go be put back in that box.
We just want the people to be happy and dance in a way no one runs into trouble. And while few expect a new regime anytime soon, the dancing shows no sign of slowing down. Ali Arouzi, NBC News.
Ali Arouzi, thanks so much for that reporting. And that's a wrap for this hour. Coverage picks up right now. We're coming on the air tonight with a new warning from a key Israeli leader on the war between Israel and Hamas, that the fighting could soon expand into other parts of the Middle East. We're on the ground in the region with what the situation on the border between Israel and Lebanon looks like, as hopes for a ceasefire in Gaza dwindle. Plus, wet and messy weather from coast to coast as millions of Americans head home after the holidays. Could that mean trouble for your travel plans? And an emotional moment for the friends and families of the University of Idaho students who were murdered last November. The house where it happened getting torn down today, but not everyone's happy about it. We'll explain. Then 2024 presidential hopeful Nikki Haley trying to walk back some controversial comments she made about what caused the Civil War, why her answer didn't include slavery, and what she's saying now. Plus, a woman whose story made national headlines and inspired TV shows is now out of prison after serving most of a 10-year sentence for murdering her mother. What we could be learning about her now that she can share her story in public. Hi, I'm Dasha Burns, in for Hallie, and tonight, millions battling bad weather coast to coast on one of the busiest travel days of the year. Let's look out west first. A high surf and coastal flood warning all along the area today, all along the Bay Area today, triggering evacuation orders in some coastal communities. Tidal surge making a lot of places along the coast look like this today, and more stormy weather's on the way. Rains in the forecast, and cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle are all looking at potential flight delays. That's what people over on the other side of the country have been dealing with, too. Flood alerts remain in effect in some parts of rainy East Coast. Pockets of dense fog also making visibility an issue in the Northeast. This comes on what AAA says could be one of the season's busiest days on the roads as people head home from their holiday trips. It says over 115 million Americans are set to travel this week, the second most since they started tracking this back in 2000. Also, some delays today for people flying home in South Florida. Check out the lines at the Miami and West Palm Beach airports as travelers wait and wait and wait to get on their planes home. Let's get to Marissa Parra, who's been waiting out there too, live for us in Florida. Marissa, we know parts of the country are still seeing rain and clouds. How is that impacting travel?
Dasha, let me tell you about rain. This is the first time all day I've not been standing under a tent. But don't let the clear skies fool you, because we are still seeing the impacts from all the rain that we saw across the southern part of the state. Miami International Airport still leading the so-called misery map. That is a contest nobody wants to win. We know South Florida has seen a lot of delays. In fact, Miami International seeing a roughly 10% of the nation's delays today. And this is a weekend, this is after a weekend that broke records. We just saw the day before Christmas Eve, single day passenger volume, all-time record broken. So we spoke to one of those miserable passengers that was impacted by the delays you see on the map. That is the misery map. This is a passenger you're about to hear from one of the South Florida airports in West Palm. Take a listen.
I am tired. It's cold. Oh man, uncomfortable. Optimistic still, but everybody unfortunately doesn't have that much wiggle room. I don't know what's going on, but it's not the best. It's not looking the best at all.
Well, hopefully the clear skies now means that she's on her way to where she was trying to get to, no longer cold, tired, and miserable. But listen, when it comes to holiday travel, we know the majority of travelers are taking to the roads, 104 million. So this is something this is the reason why we're out here right now. AAA says this is the busiest day, and it's supposed to be from the hours of 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. So the good news is here we are approaching the end of that part where it's supposed to be at its busiest, Dasha. So my biggest recommendation for anyone watching who wants to avoid even the possibility of getting stuck in bad holiday traffic is to leave a little bit later and maybe just bring a nice neck pillow, extra strong coffee. You can never go wrong with those combinations, right?
Marissa, we will take all of your recommendations. You've been covering travel for a long time now. And look, is this just the new normal that we should get used to? I mean, it seems like the post-pandemic travel boom shows no signs of letting up.
Right, especially when it comes to other forms of travel aside from the roads. I mean, there are some states, like in the state of Florida, we are, at least AAA is saying, we're expecting to see a record number of Florida drivers. But on a national level, it's really air travel and even travel by way of cruise ships that we're seeing an increase, and a steady increase at that. So we spoke to a AAA spokesperson on one of the reasons, or some of the reasons, we might be seeing those changes in travel patterns. Take a listen.
We saw it over the summer and over Thanksgiving. More people are flying now post-pandemic. There's more interest in travel. Now so many people want to get back out there. Hybrid work and remote work certainly give travelers more flexibility to go on trips, work from the road, to maybe not be at the airports and on the roads when everybody else is going back.
So in short, Dasha, I think it's perhaps people able to take the trips that they waited to take during the pandemic, whether it's for safety reasons, maybe they had time to save up, or maybe the border issues that some countries we were seeing issues with people being able to travel to. So I think it's a perfect storm, if you will, of why we're seeing these travel changes. And I'll add one more thing. We are seeing, because of remote work, we are seeing changes in when people leave and when people come back from the holiday, which is making it that much more difficult to predict. So you might see me here at a different time this time next year. So I'll touch base with you then on what we've learned.
Perfect storm. I see what you did there. Marissa Parr, I can always count on you for the puns. Thank you so much. All right, right now, crews are tearing down the house where 4 University of Idaho students were murdered, despite calls from some of the victims' families to keep it standing. The university deciding to demolish it to help move forward with the healing process. You see the names and faces of the 4 victims here: Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Madison Mogan, stabbed to death last November. And some of their families say tearing down the house could hurt the upcoming trial if the jury wants to see it or has additional questions. But the trial hasn't been scheduled yet, even though the suspect was arrested a year ago tomorrow. Let's bring in Dana Griffin, who has been covering all the latest on this case. Dana, first, let's start with this decision from the university to tear down the house. How did they come to that decision, given some of the families didn't want it to happen?
Yeah, and they say they acknowledge that. They understand this is a very emotional thing for the families, but they say they sought advice from the prosecution and the defense because neither side fought to keep this house standing. And the prosecution has taken their measurements, so they will have these renderings and exhibits that they can present in court. They say it's also very costly. We found out today $700 a day the university was paying to have a security officer sit outside that house, because you've got people who just want to look inside or try to get access. You know, this is a case that has, caught the attention of the entire nation. So you can imagine what type of people have been trying to get onto that property. And one spokesperson talked about why it's important for that community, not just the university, but the city of Moscow, to move forward. Listen.
Our understanding is, from a legal standpoint, everyone was finished with the house. So then it's just the emotional piece, which is absolutely worth acknowledging and appreciating. But knowing that for our community, it was time for the house to come down.
Yeah, and she also talked about how it's kind of a relief to, have it torn down, because for a lot of people, it's a reminder of the gruesome murders that happened inside that home. Now, as far as the family, they put out the statement last night saying why they felt the university and the DA's office should try to keep it standing. And this really centers around the case. They want to make sure that if this jury has any questions or if they need better perspective, they could have gone into that home. You can see some of the things that they listed in their statement. They wanted the vantage point. They wanted to know, where were the roommates? What was that like for them? Where was Kohlberger possibly hiding inside the home? Where could he have been outside, and what vantage point did he have looking inside the home? Also, what could you hear? One of the surviving roommates talked about how she heard the dog and other things. So for them, they felt this was really vital.
Right. Well, and the trial hasn't started yet. In fact, there hasn't even been a date set.
Exactly.
Why is that taking so long?
So this case there's been delay after delay after delay. Kohlberger's team has tried unsuccessfully to try to get this case thrown out. He has waived his right to a speedy trial. So I think we're getting a little bit closer. The state has requested a 6-week summer trial, and they were specific about that because they want to make sure kids aren't in school, high school, and the universities. And they're hoping to get it done within that amount of time. So we're just waiting for the judge to, make that call.
All right, Dana Griffin, following every step of this for us. We really appreciate it. Thank you. 2024 presidential hopeful Nikki Haley today trying to clear the air about why she didn't mention slavery when a voter asked her what the cause of the Civil War was. She's saying she thought that part was a given. The moment in question happened last night at a town hall in New Hampshire. Listen.
What was the cause of the United States Civil War?
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. What do you think the cause of the Civil War was?
Thank you. And in the year 2023, it's astonishing to me that you answer that question without mentioning the word slavery.
What do you want me to say about slavery?
No, you answered my question. Thank you.
Next question.
So today, this is how she's kind of backpedaling that.
Of course, the Civil War was about slavery. We know that. That's unquestioned, always the case. We know the Civil War was about slavery. But it was also more than that. It was about the freedoms of every individual. It was about the role of government.
Ryan Nobles joins me now to unpack all of this. Ryan, the backlash didn't take long to come fast and furious. Haley answer, right? What she said last night and how she explains it today. What is she trying to say, and is it enough?
Well, the one thing that's clear, Dasha, is that she tried to fix this as quickly as possible. She went on a radio show this morning to explain her thinking. She answered it right away during a town hall. She even did a gaggle with a group of reporters who peppered her with questions about it. And basically, her argument is that slavery is a given when it comes to the Civil War. And she was working off of that foundation when she gave this kind of long, meandering answer about freedom and some of the other factors that are involved with the Civil War and how historians would view the Civil War. And you're right, it's drawn quite a bit of skepticism from some of her opponents, among them Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. Listen to how he responded to this.
And I think that she showed time and time again that when it's time, when the lights get hot, that she wilts under pressure. And that was a good example last night.
So Haley is hoping that this just blows over, and there is some evidence that in a Republican primary that is the case, because there have been a number of controversial comments made by a number of candidates in this race, most principally Donald Trump, who has made a lot of comments that have drawn quite a bit of criticism, and it hasn't impacted him at all in the polls. So we'll have to see. Time is running out for Nikki Haley. Up until this point, she was starting to surge in the polls. So, Dasha, we'll have to see if this derails the progress that she's made up until this point.
Right, and Haley is not Trump. I mean, no politician is. And as you mentioned, time is of the essence here. We're so close to the Iowa caucuses and then New Hampshire, and we're rocking and rolling through the primaries here. So this kind of gaffe, if you will, at this point, could this be a serious speed bump or even potentially a big roadblock for her?
Well, you're right, because the timing is so crucial for Nikki Haley, and the margin of error that she has is so small. I mean, look at some of these polls. For instance, she is in second place in Iowa right now to Donald Trump, but he leads by such a wide margin. And what Nikki Haley needs to do, first of all, she's got to beat Ron DeSantis in Iowa, but she also has to cut in to Donald Trump's lead. And she may not need to win in Iowa, but she does have to show improvement beyond where she stands right now. She's got to beat expectations. And something like this, if there are voters out there that are sampling the options outside of Donald Trump, but they're trying to come up with a reason to vote for someone other than Donald Trump, this may be something that just eliminates her as a potential candidate for any number of reasons. Because she left slavery out, because to Ron DeSantis' point, it just looks like she can't handle the pressure of the moment. All of these things are possibilities. And because everything at this stage of the game is so crucial for Nikki Haley, anything could knock her off. But there's still time, and there's still opportunity for her to fix this. It's just that that time is running out.
It is do or die time for all of these candidates. Ryan, thank you so much. Tonight, all eyes on a potential new front of this war between Israel and Hamas that could soon expand into other parts of the Middle East. A key Israeli leader warning the government could ramp up its military action against the militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon. Both sides have been exchanging fire there for weeks, as any hopes of a ceasefire could come in Gaza appear to be dwindling tonight, with Israel now saying, quote, the stopwatch for a diplomatic solution is running out. That war cabinet meeting tonight, as we're just learning, Secretary of State Blinken will return to Israel in the new year, Israeli sources tell NBC News, as the UN is now warning 40% of people inside Gaza are at risk of famine, saying they're grappling with, quote, catastrophic hunger. And this, as we're just learning, a second American citizen was killed during Hamas's October 7th terror attack on Israel. This woman, Judy Weinstein, was killed alongside her husband. She was a mother of 4 and a grandmother to 7. Let's bring in Jay Gray, who's on the ground in Tel Aviv. Jay, let's start right there. What more do we know about Judith Weinstein?
Well, we have confirmed that she has died just about a week after it was confirmed that her husband has also died. What's not clear is where or when that may have happened. We know that they were victims during the attack on October 7th, that their kibbutz both wounded during those attacks. But it's still not certain whether they died as a result of those wounds at the kibbutz and their bodies were taken by Hamas terrorists into Gaza, or if they died in captivity. Something their family is really hoping that they can find out once there is a chance to investigate all of this a bit more. As you talked about, mother of 4, grandmother of 7, and someone who was very active in this kibbutz, someone who was an important part of this community.
Right. So important to remember there are human beings here. We're talking about a real human toll.
Yes.
At the same time as we're talking about these threats that we're hearing that this war could get bigger. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, look, I was up around the Lebanon border about 2 weeks after the ground incursion started, and there was a lot of activity there, but it's really ramped up over the last 2 weeks. And we've seen back and forth. Fighting has intensified. Israel, as you talked about, is saying that the time for a diplomatic conclusion to that is running very thin. And we heard from a member of the War Cabinet today, Benny Gantz, who is a very outspoken member of that cabinet. He's saying that if the world does not act to stop the shooting into the northern settlements and to remove Hezbollah from the border, the IDF will do it. I can tell you, Dasha, that I have been told troops are mounting there, more troops moving in, more equipment, tanks and other equipment, and they are preparing for an all-out front there if that's necessary, something that's a big concern not only here in Israel, but globally as well.
Wow, thinking about an expansion of this is just unimaginable right now. Jay, thank you so much. Right now, a caravan of more than 1,500 people is heading north, further into Mexico, as they head towards the United States southern border. That number coming from Mexico's president, down significantly from the estimated 8,000 people believed to be in that caravan just yesterday. Plus, we're getting new details about the meeting between Mexico's president and U.S. officials. Both sides calling it a good and productive trip and have agreed to work more closely together to tackle the crisis. That is extending beyond just the border cities, with mayors from New York, Chicago, and Denver saying they have no more space for migrants coming into their cities and are demanding more of a heads up and coordination on when migrant buses can arrive. Let's bring in Morgan Chesky in Dallas. Morgan, let's start there. Look, this caravan will add to what is already an overwhelming number of migrants trying to get into the country. What can you tell us about where they are now, and what more do we know at this hour?
Dasha, this caravan was last seen in the Mexican state of Chiapas. That is in the deep southern part of the country near the border with Guatemala. The numbers, as you mentioned, have dropped precipitously over the last 48 hours or so. And we heard that both from the Mexican president and from U.S. federal sources as well. Their estimate around 25 to 3,000 people. The majority of these migrants from those Central American countries. And videos have shown that they're comprised of men, women, and so many children here, Dasha. I want you to have a chance to hear from some of them that we've listened to as part of that caravan. Take a listen.
We, as you see, come here struggling without bothering anyone, and we come without disrespecting anyone. What we want is work.
We want help. We want an education for our children. That's all we ask for as human beings.
Now, the average length travel distance-wise in a day, upwards of 12 to 15 miles. They are still about 1,000 miles south of the U.S.-Mexico border, Dasha. So there is a ways to go. And we do know that in the past, migrant groups have splintered and can become broken up from these large numbers that we hear of near the southern part of Mexico. So a very long ways to go, a very dangerous way to go as well here. Dasha?
Morgan, thank you so much for bringing us those voices. It's so important to remember when we talk about those numbers, those are people. Look, a lot of folks are calling for change when it comes to this situation, right? We've got this meeting with Secretary of State Blinken and Mexico's president. Can we expect any change to come from that?
Well, they certainly said it was productive, and that came from parties on both sides here from this Mexico City meeting. We don't know exactly what was said or promised. This was a closed-door negotiation, but there was acknowledgement that a couple of key areas of change we could anticipate to see in the new year would involve, number one, a shoring up of border security on both sides. Mexico promising to tackle the human smuggling problem that is so rampant right now with this migrant surge. The U.S. promising to repatriate more migrants. And we also had Mexico asking for the U.S. to keep railways open. We know that in recent weeks, they were closed down after hundreds of migrants were seen riding atop freight trains. The Mexican president saying that each day those railroads are closed, that is really a blow to commerce between the two countries. And there was acknowledgement of trying to maintain that going forward, although several international crossings are still impacted by this migrant surge. Dasha?
So many factors at play here. Morgan, thank you so much. A Missouri woman who plotted to kill her allegedly abusive mother is now out of prison. Early this morning, 32-year-old Gypsy Rose Blanchard was released on parole. She was serving a 10-year sentence related to the 2015 killing of her mother. Her story gained the attention of the world and Hollywood after a popular documentary came out in 2017. Since then, there's also been TV series, and now a documentary series is on the way where Blanchard tells the story herself. She claims her mom physically and mentally abused her, forcing her to fake serious illnesses, which led her to getting painful procedures she did not need. Her boyfriend ended up stabbing and killing her mother while Gypsy was hiding in the bathroom. He's serving life in prison without parole. Let's bring in Jesse Kirsch for more. Jesse, Blanchard's story really captured the attention of so many. A lot of folks talking about this today. Catch us up to speed here for those who haven't been following. What do we know about what happened in this case?
Yeah, so Dash, you just talked about this plot to kill Gypsy Rose Blanchard's mother, Dee Dee. But what came out when her mother was discovered to have been stabbed to death is allegations of what had been apparently been going on for years prior. Gypsy Rose Blanchard alleges that her mother for years had been forcing her to pretend that she was critically ill, allegedly shaving her head to make it seem like she had leukemia, forcing her to be in a wheelchair, forcing her to eat through a feeding tube, go through as many as 30 different surgeries. All these allegations came to light, certainly disturbing allegations. And so that is something that came before this murder plot. So those allegations coming to light at the time of the case as things went through trial. And as you mentioned, it has been part of a media frenzy ever since. She's been the subject of multiple series, documentary series, as well as a drama series that won Patricia Arquette an Emmy. And there's another docuseries coming up as well.
Jesse, Blanchard also spoke to People magazine about her release. She said, quote, "Nobody will ever hear my say, I'm glad she's dead, or I'm proud of what I did. I regret it every single day." So with a new docuseries coming out, what might we hear about how her perspective on these things might have changed?
Yeah, so we've already heard in that People magazine interview, Dasha, that she talks about wanting to conveying the message that she doesn't think that murder is the answer for someone who is in an abusive relationship, as she says she was. So she talks about a lesson learned there. There's also more, as you mentioned, coming out in that new docuseries. Here's part of what we can expect.
There was a lot of emotional and physical abuse, hospitals, surgeries. I started to feel like it was either her or me.
And the media attention does not appear to be in the rearview mirror yet, Dasha. Yesterday, Gypsy Rose was the top search on Google. Dasha.
Wow, we have not heard the last from Gypsy Rose. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jesse. Now, coming up, new warnings tonight from the World Health Organization about fake versions of Ozempic, how officials say they're getting into supply chains. Next. Plus, more fallout for Boeing's most popular plane, why the company is telling airlines to inspect all their 737 MAX planes. Health regulators around the world are sounding the alarm about counterfeit Ozempic, fake versions of the hugely popular diabetes drug that's often used for weight loss have been reported now in over a dozen countries. That's catching the attention of the World Health Organization. We first brought you this story last week when the FDA warned Americans of the fake drugs, saying it seized thousands of units of counterfeit versions sold through some legitimate drug supply sources like pharmacies. Berkeley Lovelace Jr. joins me now. Berkeley, how legit do these fake drugs look if they're getting into normal supply in some cases?
Yeah, so they're not exactly the same, but they are close enough to fool somebody if they didn't know what to look for. So in the packaging that the FDA found, they found that the needle packaging that came with the drug looked exactly or nearly exactly the same as the real ones. The logos, the brand logos on the fake products looked nearly identical as the real ones, and even the products came with a serial lot number, just like the real ones.
Wow. So what's in these drugs? Do we know? Are they dangerous?
Yeah, so that's something the FDA is investigating right now. In Germany, in the fake products that they got, that they found that the drugs contained insulin instead of semaglutide, the active ingredient in Ozempic. And so injecting insulin in somebody without diabetes is extremely dangerous. And so some people in Austria were hospitalized because of this product. However, it's important to note in the U.S. that there has been no serious adverse events in people from these fake products. The FDA says that there have been 5 people harmed by the product, but they were not serious. The side effects were similar to what you see with the real Ozempic.
So what can people do to figure out if the drug that they have is the real kind?
Yeah, so the fake products were distributed through legitimate supply channels, and so the FDA has posted the fake serial and lot number that was used in these products, so people can be on the lookout for that. That being said, experts told me that the best way is just to get your prescription through a healthcare provider. A lot of times people will try to go through other means to get their medication, usually driven by money. I mean, if you look at the cost of weight loss drugs right now, a lot of these drugs can go for around $1,000 a month just for a month's supply. And so at least if you're getting it through the doctor will know and be on the lookout for these fake products along with you as well.
Right. I'm sure the drug maker isn't thrilled about this. What are they saying about it?
Yeah, so Novo Nordisk, the maker of Ozempic, is working with the FDA on its investigation. So far, it says none of the fake product came from its authorized supply chain. So right now, they're looking to see whether a third-party criminal wholesaler has gotten the product or whether somebody else in the supply chain may have diverted this product away and has been selling the fake version.
Berkeley Lovelace, thank you so much. Let's get over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Boeing is urging airlines to inspect their 737 MAX planes for a possible loose bolt in their rudder system. It's the latest quality issue to affect the jetliner. Remember, 2 737 MAX crashes a few years ago killed more than 300 people. The company says the current issue was discovered in routine testing and that all new 737 MAX jets will undergo checks. Alaska and United Airlines say they don't expect any operational impacts. Number 2, U.S. regulators are recalling tiny magnetic balls, citing thousands of hospitalizations and at least 7 deaths related to similar products after they were ingested. Walmart sold the Relax magnetic balls between 2022 and April of this year. The set contains hundreds of magnets. According to the recall notice, magnets can get logged in the digestive system if swallowed. The company that manufactures this set could not immediately be reached for comment. Number 3, Succession star Alan Ruck is responding to a lawsuit filed by a man accusing him of causing a multi-car crash in L.A. He's seeking unspecified damages. In court papers, the actor's attorneys say that man should, quote, take nothing, and none of his injuries in the crash were because of Ruck's actions. The trial is set to begin next summer. Number 4, about 40% of borrowers did not make payments after the pandemic-era pause on student loan payments expired in October. That's according to new data from the Department of Education. Student loan debt now totals more than $1.7 trillion. You heard it right, trillion. Number 5, nobody won the $700 million Powerball jackpot last night, so that means it's up for grabs again on Saturday. Now the top prize will grow to an estimated $760 million. It'll be the last drawing of 2023. Let's see if anyone gets lucky. And when we come back, Donald Trump's ballot battle in Colorado, heading all the way to the state Supreme Court. We're talking about the GOP's new moves next. NBC covers hundreds of international stories each day, and because it's tough to read, watch, or listen to them all, our international teams have done it for you. Here are some of the things they're keeping an eye on in a segment we call The Global. In the UK, crews cleaning up today after a big storm caused damage like this. A tornado apparently ripped the roofs off of these houses in parts of Manchester. Something like 100 homes had to evacuate. The storm had heavy rain, snow, and high wind and left thousands without power. In Chile, a group of sea lions and some seagulls crashed a fisherman protest. The 3 mammals took a little stroll around riot police and barricades. The protesters are demanding payment after the government banned them from catching a type of fish. And in Spain, dozens of people staged a mock battle with flour and eggs as part of a religious festival going back more than 200 years. One side takes over the mayor's office and puts in place a bunch of absurd laws, and anyone who breaks those laws gets fined, and that money goes to charity. I'd like to make a few laws. The Colorado GOP now taking its fight to try to get Donald Trump back on the ballot up to the Supreme Court. It's asking the High Court to overturn that controversial state court ruling that says Mr. Trump is not eligible to be on the Colorado ballot because of his role in the events leading up to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. We should note the former president's own legal team says it'll also file an appeal. This new move from Colorado's Republican Party means Mr. Trump is back on the ballot for now, at least for the Republican primary in that state. One big question, what will the Supreme Court do? Vaughn Hilliard joins me now. Vaughn, good to see you, my friend. So we've got a lot of back and forth on this. What could come next here?
Hey, Dasha, look, of all the legal battles that Donald Trump is facing in the months ahead, this is the one that has the highest political stakes. For Donald Trump, and not only him, but the Colorado GOP, which is making this appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, if the U.S. Supreme Court, in fact, takes up this appeal, they could find and affirm the Colorado Supreme Court's decision disqualifying him from the ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which says that any individual who has engaged in insurrection or aided or provided comfort to those who have engaged in insurrection is disqualified from the ballot. Now, it's a matter of timing. January 15th is the Iowa caucus. 1 week later, the New Hampshire primary. So Republican voters are about to begin selecting who they want their Republican nominee to be, and that only increases the stakes of this for Donald Trump, his legal team, and the Colorado GOP. Take a look at the filing from last night, in which the lawyers for the Colorado GOP write in part, quote, "The prompt hearing of this case is necessary to prevent the Colorado Supreme Court's decision from having an irreparable effect on the electoral process." Now, there's a lot of nuance as part of this filing here from the Colorado GOP to the Supreme Court, but one of them is making the case that it should not be the decision of the Secretary of State of any state or a state court to determine whether an individual running for president of the United States is qualified or not.
Vaughn, there's a lot of action in Colorado because we're also learning about another political shakeup in that state with Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert switching districts. What more can you tell us about that?
Right. Lauren Boebert, the close ally of Donald Trump, but also an individual who was facing intense scrutiny back in September when she was seen groping her partner at a play of Beetlejuice, as well as vaping in the theater before being asked to remove. Well, she just barely won her election a year ago by just about 500 votes against her Democratic opponent. And this time she was facing a Republican primary challenger who was polling competitively against her. So she announced that she's going to actually be running in a congressional district next door. It's about 200 miles away from where she lives, but it's a heavy Republican district. And if she makes it out of that primary, you're likely looking at a Congresswoman Boebert heading into another term. Dasha?
Never a dull moment in American politics. It's good to see you, my friend.
Thanks,
Vaughn Hilliard. All right, staying with politics now as the countdown to 2024 heats up and 2023 comes to an end. Our Steve Kornacki is breaking down all the major clues where we're getting from what we're getting from polling this year and what everything we're learning about 2023 tells us about where the race to the White House could go next. Steve has more from the big board.
All right, well, we are approaching once every 4 years, the big one, the presidential election year 2024, almost upon us. So let's take a look here at how politics have and how the election of 2024 has kind of taken shape in 23 and the big questions we're looking at as 2024 kicks off. So first of all, who's going to be the Republican nominee, presumably against Joe Biden? At the start of 2023, this seemed like a very up in the air question. You can see the trend line for the candidates. And remember, at the start of 23, Republicans were coming off a pretty rough midterm. Candidates who'd been closely aligned with Donald Trump had lost key races in 2022. At the start of 23, Ron DeSantis was running pretty close in the poll average to Donald Trump. And then look what happened. It just exploded here for Trump and went the other way for DeSantis. What happened right around here in the calendar? That was when the first indictment of Trump came down, the one from the Manhattan District Attorney. It almost seems to have triggered a rally around Trump effect among Republicans, and that's just held. all year through all the legal drama and everything else that's happened. And here we are at the end of the year, and in the average, Trump just, open lengths ahead of Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Ramaswamy, and Christie too, for that matter. So we'll see in the early contests if any of those candidates are going to have a shot here to beat Trump. They're probably going to have to make some noise, whether it's DeSantis in Iowa. He seems to really be trying to plant his flag there. Haley in New Hampshire. She's gotten some encouraging polling news there. Can one of them beat Trump in one of these early states? Of course, Haley's South Carolina will play a key role among the early states as well. Can one of them beat Trump in the early states and make this a race? That is what we're going to find out in the first 6 weeks or so of 2024. How about the Democratic end of things? Joe Biden seems poised to be the Democratic nominee. What kind of year has he had politically? Well, again, he started 2023 coming off those good midterms for Democrats, and his approval rating, 46-50, wasn't that bad, but it's taken a hit this year. And as we start to close out the year, our final NBC poll had him at just 40% approval, 57% disapproval. How does this compare to past presidents entering their re-election year? Here you can see it. Here's the 40 that we have Biden at right now. These are all the final polls heading into the election year, re-election year that NBC conducted. You just see all the recent presidents. Look, Trump got beat in 2020. He was at 44 heading into his re-election year. Bush Sr. got beat in 92. He was at 52 and heading south rapidly there. But you see how that number compares. That's the lowest. That's the lowest in an NBC poll for an incumbent facing a re-election here. But it is a tight race when you poll Biden versus Trump. At the start of the year, in the average of the polls nationally, Biden had a 2-point advantage. Now, at the end of the year, it is Trump who, on average, has a 2-point advantage here. It's a very, very close race, obviously. And what are the concerns of voters? The dynamics we'll be talking about if this race does materialize. Joe Biden, of course, is the oldest president ever at this point. And his his fitness, his age, about 3 in 4 voters in our poll say it's a major or moderate concern. Big thing in 24 is going to be Trump's legal situation. Are there convictions? What goes on in the courtroom for him? 62% right now say that's a major or moderate concern for them. Would that number change if there's a conviction? Would that number change based on how these cases start to sort out? Big question, obviously, we'll be following well into 2024. And this is interesting, too. Just there is clearly what this ballot question is showing you here is matching Trump against just a generic Democrat. Trump loses sizably. Matching Biden against a generic Republican. Biden loses by double digits. It's just showing you broadly there's not a big appetite for Trump versus Biden, even though it seems that each party, at least as we enter 2024, is poised to go in that direction. And that leads to this final graphic here, a poll from the Wall Street Journal recently. They included a bunch of third-party options, and against Biden and Trump, they added up to 17%. That's a big question heading into 2024. Is there going to be a real third-party candidate to create a wild card in this?
Our thanks to Steve Kornacki for that great work at the big board. Now, coming up, a new report says our nation's capital is struggling to stay above water. We're talking to the reporter behind the story next in tonight's Backstory. It's time to get to the backstory. Our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into our bigger picture. Tonight, an in-depth look at how the nation's capital is struggling to stay above water. The Washington Post outlining some of the many ways we're seeing Washington's vulnerability to flooding play out in real time. From multi-million-dollar unplanned changes to prevent the National Museum of African American History and Culture from collapsing under the pressure of a buried creek it was built over, to drowning cherry trees around the tidal basin, to historical waterways long buried under the city now bursting back to life like zombies as climate change intensifies storms and rainfall. You see here a flood risk map of the area where these zombie streams could cause trouble, and the result of the people living in the nation's capital, thousands of dollars in flooding damage, which many can't afford to pay. One local telling the Post that it's embarrassing to have to verbalize that the help she and other people in her community need from the local government. Dana Priest is an investigative reporter for the Washington Post who worked on this story. Dana, thank you so much for being with us. You've covered a lot of different topics over the course of your great career, a lot of them focused on the Pentagon, intelligence agencies, and more. But this is different. What made you look into the issue of climate and infrastructure in D.C.?
Well, I'm always looking for a good story, and I live in D.C., and I found a good story right under my feet. And the more I picked away at it, the better the story got, which was, you know, we are living in Washington, D.C., the federal part downtown is living on fill that was brought in when the city was created, when George Washington decided to put a city here. They brought in, they filled in the main downtown, which used to be part of the Potomac River, with excavation, with rocks that were taken from the Capitol excavation. And so we have a very high water table, and we sit at sea level. So Washington, D.C., you know, you might think of it as the giant columns and buildings and the Capitol and the monuments, but it's really a delta city like New Orleans. And when climate change is occurring, where storms are getting more intense and rainfall is getting more intense, you have a confluence of events. You have you can't absorb the ground around the Capitol and around the National Mall cannot absorb much water. And in fact, if you get a heavy downpour, the water actually comes back up from the ground. And so as sea level rises and as these internal, we call them urban floods take place, we know them as flash floods, you have just much more flooding. You have nowhere for the rain to go. Even if it could get through the ground to the sewers, the sewer and drain water systems are overburdened. They're very old in most parts of the city, and so they fill up quickly.
And Dana,
as you mentioned here, look at some of the national.
This article, let me just, because we're running out of time, and I want to get your take on what you really took away as you were writing this, taking a step back and looking at the effects of how this city was built, right? So when you were looking into these challenges collectively, what was your biggest takeaway about especially how fast all of this was happening?
Well, honestly, I think we're one big flood away from disaster, not only for the people that live in the city, but also for the national part of the city. There's like $17 billion worth of national treasures, 39 critical buildings, facilities downtown. And if we had both a big storm and a flash flood, there's nowhere for that water to go. We have seen increasing big floods, but really we just are one big flood away. In the meantime, we're going to have to rip out the cherry trees, not all of them, but about 300 will go just to increase the size of the seawall in order to protect against sea level rise. So it's hitting the Washington area and Washington, D.C., from all different angles: flash floods, sea rise, and intensifying storms and river flooding. And unfortunately, there are many jurisdictions involved, so you can expect that there won't be an agreement on what needs to be done.
Dana, such an important and powerful piece of reporting that extends well beyond Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us. Still to come, there's a new kind of protest in Iran sparked by a viral video of a man dancing. Why that's such a big deal? Next in tonight's original. Now we want to bring you today's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. And tonight we want to bring you to Iran, where people are taking to the streets to dance, a viral movement ignited on social media by an unlikely source, with people simply expressing their joy through dance. But under the current Iranian regime, it's rarely that simple, because it can be illegal there to dance in groups publicly. Ali Arouzi has the story.
A viral video leading to a movement in Iran. Surprisingly ignited by this man, Boogie. But it's not just the catchy folk tune and confident moves striking a chord. It's the simplistic act of dancing for joy on the street. In a country where this kind of dancing in public groups is frowned upon by authorities and often illegal, it becomes a powerful symbol of civil disobedience. A BBC Persian compilation of social media videos appearing to show the dancing trend spreading rapidly from gyms to parties, basketball courts, soccer fields, alleyways, and more. We also spoke with DJ Sonami, who remixed the original video, adding synths and a driving beat that's helped supercharge the viral trend. It's a great feeling, and I'm happy that with a little effort of us, people became joyful. His producer, Qasem Alipour, telling us the remix is reaching millions of people in Iran and outside the country. But it also drew attention from authorities. According to the New York Times, local police announced they arrested 12 men in the original video with Bourri in early December and shut down their Instagram pages. The public responded with swift outrage, flooding social media channels and denouncing the alleged crackdown.
And they all did this to unite and speak up against the Iranian government, and it worked.
The police later issued a statement denying Bourri had been arrested, according to the Times. This video was like a virus. They could not prevent it, so they had to accept it. With Bourri's account restored, he's racked up over 1 million followers, and his latest post just this week, still dancing up a storm. It's just the latest chapter of civil disobedience since Iranians took to the streets in mass protests over the death of Mahsa Amini in 2022.
They feel that they want to fight for their rights and fight for human rights and their dignity.
Amini died in authorities' custody after being detained for allegedly failing to fully cover her hair and defying the country's strict dress codes.
You still have in the Iranian people, since the death of Mahsa Amini, something that's been basically let out of the box. And the Iranian people are not going to go be put back in that box.
We just want the people to be happy and dance in a way no one runs into trouble. And while few expect a new regime anytime soon, the dancing shows no sign of slowing down. Ali Arouzi, NBC News.
Ali Arouzi, thanks so much for that reporting. And that's a wrap for this hour. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.